Hello and welcome to the Sacred Gates. My name is Elura. Welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel if you've already subscribed. And if you haven't already subscribed, please feel free to do that now in case you forget later. It's always great to have more listeners on board and to help build the energy of what we believe at the Sacred Gates to be sacred and to be of value and to help. And so it's awesome to know that people subscribing who might still be listening are receiving information that may be of service to them. And that brings me great joy and purpose personally. So, when I was younger, I don't recall exactly when, but as a child, I do sense and know that I turned off my observation abilities. Obviously, there was a level of observation going on in order to function as a human being in a human life. But there was a moment or a spectrum of moments where I decided that in order to avoid suffering, I would mute my ability to observe what was going on around me. And it makes sense, doesn't it? All these coping mechanisms that we have as children so that we don't feel pain, or we hope to feel less pain, or we think that it will stop us from feeling pain, often end up becoming, well, they're karmic, aren't they? They're karmic choices that affect our path, and they're part of our karma, but they do also obviously create more suffering ultimately, because it's a choice of our lower self, because especially as children, we don't have a lot of tools. We don't have a lot of life experience. Our perspective is limited. And so doing something like muting your observation and what you see and muting your discernment feels like a good option. And of course, that can be totally a horrible thing to have done to yourself as a child, but especially in your teens, your early 20s, which for me were very turbulent for some time. And eventually my karma led me into great blessings of being able to know that I had done this. Because first of all, if you obscure your ability to discern, your observational abilities, the trick is that you've tricked yourself and you've tricked your own perceptive filter. And so often people who do this, if they don't meet the right people that can help them, or have perhaps another crisis or a crisis that will help them see that and see more, then can quite easily go on through life at that same level of perception and discernment, which can be quite low for some people if they've felt like they needed to do that in the first place, to mute that in the first place. So I suppose this talk that I thought we'd do today would be on discernment and the importance of having discernment, which really is something that comes through us when we have some silence within us, when we have some spaciousness, when we can connect to some stillness, which are all releasing qualities, aren't they? So qualities of spaciousness help us to feel released within, mentally, physically, emotionally, and then we have more space. It leads to more spaciousness. And so without that inner spaciousness, that inner sense of quality of stillness, we're not really able to discern, and quite often all our insecurities, our reactions that come from our insecurities, pressures from external worlds, pressures from internal worlds, they all become a big mess. And sometimes we can't even really remember what happened or what led us to think these thoughts, what led us to take these actions, what led us to say these things and do these things, go out with that person, get that job, lose that job, whatever it is. It all can become a bit of a mess, can't it? So it's important to train your discernment. And my personal feeling and experience is that release qualities, working with release, is, for me, and my lineage also believes this, is that training your discernment is about training your awareness, and it is about allowing your awareness to become more flexible so it can move within the many modulations of reality, the many formations of inner and outer reality itself. And so we want to be able to or what I meant to say is that release qualities really help to unveil and unobscure and reveal what is already actually there through a process of, and this is what release practices could be called, a process of subtraction. So rather than adding and accumulating and holding, we reach our goal in a sense, or we experience more discernment in this case through the releasing of, the dissolving, the subtracting, through adding less, through not adding at all, through being in the qualities and recognizing, becoming familiar, and submerging, immersing ourselves in the qualities that help us to release physical tension, emotional tension, mental tension, and that naturally opens us up to a spectrum of spaciousness. So I'm sure you can relate at a time in your life when you just needed space. As a parent, if you're a parent, you know exactly what I mean. Or you may have just been worked just beyond your capacity to the point where you just feel like you feel in touch with your soul because you feel like your soul's dying from the work you're doing. Or you just needed space from a person. So, and you realize, and you might have gotten to that point where you got that space, and what a difference it made. You just needed some space, you say. I just got some space, even if it was taking a holiday, whatever it was, you got some space. So, we could call that like a lower level, a spectrum of space. And I don't mean that judging that in a moral way. It's more just that there is a spectrum of space. So just say if you get some space, maybe it's just some time physically on your own, or maybe it's doing something that you love and you just feel relaxed again. So that's one spectrum of spaciousness. But in fact, there's a whole spectrum of spaciousness. So I think when you're walking a spiritual path, especially when it's a releasing, subtractive path, and you're experiencing the power of spaciousness, you then experience that power through the realization that there's an actual spectrum of spaciousness. So there's that level where you just get some space and you feel better and it's just what you needed, or maybe it just works for a little bit of time and that's enough. But there's also levels of spaciousness that also lead into higher and higher, more refined qualities. All of these help you, these qualities help, they physically affect you, they emotionally affect you, they mentally, karmically, spiritually, energetically affect you, just as compounding and not having enough space and the spectrum of more and more, or lack and lack and lack of space can give you too, can compound you physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, karmically, energetically. So when we get more spaciousness, more quietness, more stillness inside, and we take time every day, we are naturally training our discernment. So when we end up, just say, a lot of us feel pressured socially, even as adults. So just say if you're in an environment where something's happened, everyone's got their opinions, because you're feeling drawn to react, your own insecurities of fitting in or whatever are arising. If you've managed to collect, and I mean that in a subtractive way, as in you've immersed yourself in enough, you've got accumulated inertia, just say, of the stream of spaciousness within you, of stillness, then you can draw on that. It's already in you, and you can use that to use your discernment to rise above the ruckus, to rise above the social insecurities, to rise above the pressure to be normal, the inertial stream of society, of the social constructs that exist within you and around you. And you can use that spaciousness to give you that discernment that you are going to need to help you to, yes, rise in your path, which is to walk the higher path, whatever that might be in that time. And for you to have the perspective, especially if you were around gossiping types of people, and you yourself want to get off that road of destruction, of gossip, that you can rise yourself above that and look at the perspective from a much more compassionate, much larger perspective, and rise above the crap. I try to think of a word, but to rise above it all. And that allows you to have real feeling, real compassion, and not to be all pulled down by your lower self reactions and all those kinds of things. Now, if you can't observe what's going on, if you haven't given yourself a space to do that, it's very difficult to have that level of discernment to see people as human beings, especially in a gossiping situation or where someone has said something that's offensive to everyone or to you. I'm not talking about being a doormat, by the way, but I'm talking about actual real compassion, really feeling what humans are, and treating people as human beings. And that discernment is often lost in our society now, especially with how mentally, emotionally crazy people have become, with the opportunity to share their opinions wildly online from the safety of their own home and free of kind of any real consequences. It's amazing what people are coming up with and what they're saying, and at the rate of which people are sharing their opinions. And it is definitely something that I think is affecting people's discernment of each other as human beings, and the level of compassion that we can have to really feel people as human beings and treat people like human beings. That's just something that's been on my mind, especially having a child myself that I'm seeing navigating their way through the jungle that is social life and out there life, and working out who they are and trying to teach my child how to walk the higher path and what that means. And when we walk the higher path, it's about you. It's about you doing that for yourself. But it does affect people, I believe, around us. At least a seed perhaps is planted, as it has been for us. If we've seen other people do that, it does affect us, right? I remember there was a woman in my neighborhood who I'd had a conversation with, and we'd mentioned another person in the neighborhood, and I hadn't really thought it was actually in a negative way particularly. But she came by my house the next day and she told me that she needed to confess that she'd felt that she'd overstepped her own boundaries speaking about someone else. I really felt moved by that. It really got me to look at, well, had that been that way for me, had I just obscured and not discerned that within myself? I really respected her, and she really was, in a sense, confessing to cleanse herself of what she felt like she had done was wrong by her values. And she did that for herself, and I really respected that. So I believe that when people walk the higher path, sometimes in life, and especially having a child, we have to explain this, but it can feel like it really, those moments where you walk your higher path, it is your path, and it's a path that's defined by your values. And you bring those values, whether it's one value or all values, you bring them to life through your act, through your dedication to those values. You literally, you discern the moment, you discern the value, and then you make that choice to put that value above and beyond your lower self, your reactions, your cravings, your aversions, your reactions, all of that lower stuff, your insecurities, and you put that value, you give life to that value, and you give energy to the quality that is that value. And in fact, I would say you even give life and energy to the deity that is that value, such as kindness, compassion, self-respect, respect, sacredness. And that path sometimes can feel like you're not walking with other people, you're walking alone, and you are. And in those moments, even though it might feel difficult, when you put your values first and you discern that, you are actually defining who you are, and you're defining yourself in alignment with those higher values. And so you then become those higher values, and those higher values are then able to protect you. A lot of us think of values such as the ones I mentioned, honesty as well, truth, things like this, that they just kind of become words. They're concepts, but they're not. They're actual beings. They're qualities that have consciousness and will support you and protect you and get you through when you place them and put them above everything else, above yourself. Because let's face it, when life's just about you or about me, there's not as much meaning. Life can get quite small and contracted, can't it? Because so much of us is the lower self, and we've got traumas we're releasing and things like that. But when it's bigger than us, and values are bigger than us, but they will protect us when we make them part of our journey, and we pave our higher self path with those values by putting them first, no matter what. No matter what other people are saying, no matter what other people are saying about you, No matter what is happening and falling down around you, if you can use your discernment, train your discernment through giving yourself some time, some space, exploring the spectrum of spaciousness itself through release practices, through meditation, then we are on a good path, and we can keep nourishing and nurturing that path, training our discernment, and that will definitely protect us, as we'll be able to see a lot more. So I just wanted to share that with you. I hope you're having a lovely day. Bye-bye for now.